Any language, it sounds like truth. Yeah.
So now we're starting Parshas Vayikra. We're going to look a little bit at the concept of a korban. So the word korban means to become close. Korban is a notion of kiruv. And it goes back to a very, very old tradition. You know, korbanos we can find, even today archaeologists are finding the animals were sacrificed thousands of years ago, not only in our culture and all the other cultures. In fact, the Rambam wants to say that we adopted the concept of sacrifice from other cultures. But the Mekabalim have a different approach. And the korban, just like everything else in Judaism, is symbolic, meaning it speaks to the imagination. Every time we speak about symbology, we're speaking to something inside of us that designs our experience, and it speaks in symbology. So for example, when we become afraid because we feel unsafe, how did we know to be afraid? What within us caused the shift between feeling safe and feeling afraid? So it's not just the words that we tell ourselves or the words that we pick up, it's very much the symbology. So for example, if we'll hear about an accident, we'll think about it a certain way, and if we'll see an ambulance with the lights flashing, then we'll think about the accident in a different way. And that's because symbology has been activated into our imagination. So even though the information is the same, but the experience is going to be very different based on the symbolic realities that are being described to our imagination. And so a korban has very much to do with that concept. So originally, korbanos was about finding a way how someone who was created can get closer to the one who created him. A creature, a human being, for example, wants to elevate his status and get close to his creator. And this we find, for example, Adam Arishain was makev a par with one keren. So whatever that means, obviously that even that description is symbolic. But he gave a korban, and then we have the fight between Cain and Hevel that breaks out after they both gave korbanos. HaKadosh Baruch Hu took one korban. Hevel, he listened to his korban, and that needs further investigation. What does that mean? You know, we know in the Beis Hamikdash it meant that a fire would come down from above, that there would be fire that's unnatural, or at least not from the physical side. And in that story, we don't know specifically what that means. The Torah says a lashon shah. Kain v'mechosei lo shah. HaKadosh Baruch Hu didn't turn towards his. But sacrifices is ancient. It's very old, and it relates to a certain realization about what we are here to do. The goal of humanity, the goal of our going through this experience. And because we are at a place where we are not in the state where we want to be, so intuitively our imagination assumes that we must sacrifice something, we must give something, we must change something in order to attain the level that we want to attain, in order to proceed from where we are and go deeper. And so for us today, for example, if we want to become better people, there are certain sacrifices that we're going to have to be willing to make in order to get close to the reality we want to get close to. And so I think this is where the word sacrifice gets its connotation from, which is today a negative connotation. It's because today, in order to come to the Creator, we have to be willing to give away certain comforts, in order to overcome the difficulties that are placed in our path by the current state of society, by the current state of humanity, by the current state of our evolution, where we're not in a state where we can come close simply through pleasure, simply through enjoying what the Creator created. It's a legitimate way to come close, but we're not in the place where we can only come close through that side. So if we want to come close, there's going to be sacrifice involved. There's going to be certain parts of ourselves that we're going to have to overlook, that we're going to allow to not be fulfilled in order to gain a deeper relationship with reality, in order to go somewhere that we couldn't go before. And this is why we would sacrifice an animal. So the symbology of animals relates to our urges, our habits that are strictly relating to the physical, that don't relate to intelligence directly. And so the goal for us in order to evolve is going to be to allow the lower sides of ourselves, the physical side, to accommodate the deeper intelligence, to accommodate the truth. And so once the intelligence wakes up, once we want to achieve a certain reality, we have to be willing to sometimes not pursue things that physically they will be pleasant to us, because there's a deeper reality that we're trying to attain. There's a deeper truth that we're looking for. And so this proves to our spirit, this proves to our imagination the importance of our neshama, of our soul, of our deeper side. And so in this relationship, the soul, the intelligence within man represents the Creator. And the physical aspect of the created represents the animal side, the one that still needs to be trained in order to interact appropriately with life. And so when we sacrifice an animal towards the Creator, for the purpose of elevating something, so the same way we recognize that within our experience we have to be able to overlook our physical discomforts occasionally in order to enhance the direction that our intelligence can take us in order to go deeper into our spiritual reality. And so this interaction is an interaction that at this time of our evolution comes through sacrifice, comes through giving something away, comes through what we might look at as killing something, essentially, right? Because every time we have a desire that rises within us and we don't fulfill it, there is something that's being killed within us. There's something inside of us that dies a little bit. But the purpose of that death is to enhance the ultimate life. It's like taking out different weeds from within a field. So even though that's a form of killing, but the goal is that the trees and the plants that need to grow, they should get the full life. So the same way we want the intelligent part of us to get the full support of all our energy. And we don't want to waste energy on things that have no purpose, that are going to complicate life. They're going to cause us to get more confused and more entangled. And so sometimes we have to sacrifice those things for the deeper truth, for the deeper knowledge. And so here it says on the pasuk, Adam ki yakiv miken korban Hashem. So it says, Adam do shchinta. Adam means the shchina. Hain lekarev shchinta Hashem. That a person should bring close the shchina HaKadosh Baruch Hu Rotzu Loimer leyached kitchebrichi shchintei. To be meyached, the deeper intelligence, the truth, with the presence of the divine that's dressed up within life. That from you, only from you, can come the unification of creation to the Creator. And this is because human beings are the creation, and only the creation changes. The Creator doesn't change. And so if we want to shift, if we want to change in the condition of humanity, in the condition of the Shekhinah, in the condition of the manifested reality, then we must drive there. We must be the ones that change. We learn about Hashem in order to know how to do that change within us so that we can correlate to a better side of Him, to a better aspect of His truth. But ultimately, it's our work that's going to make the change, that's going to make the difference. So it says, Adam ki yakriv mikem korban l'Shem. From you comes the closeness that can be between Adam, between the concept of man, which is the Shekhinah, the ultimate man, the perfect man, and the Creator that created man and wants him to be in that way. So only we can change the inner reality, the reality that's true in the world of perception, in the world of concept. And that world of concept runs all the worlds. So within the world of concept, we meet all the realities. So for example, within the world of concept, we can meet each other. So if I meet somebody and I have a discussion with him, where are we meeting? Where's this meeting taking place? So the meeting is not taking place physically. Right? We can even do it over the phone. We can do it over the internet. We can do it in many different ways. So the meeting that's taking place is a meeting in the world of concept. So I have a concept of you and you have a concept of me. And now within my world of concept, your concept is saying things. And within your world of concept, my concept is saying things. And so me sitting here, cannot ever meet you. Because I'm stuck in my own world. I cannot leave. But I have biological tools through which I can communicate into your world of concept so that you can create similar creations to a certain degree to what I'm trying to transmit, to what I have in my mind. And so the meeting is a meeting that's taking place in the Olam HaMachshava, in the world of concept. And that world of concept is the one that runs all the worlds. We know that that world of concept runs the physical world, because that we can observe dimensions as well, the ones that we can't even perceive, and therefore we don't understand the consequences of the words we are saying, the deeds that we are doing, the thoughts that we are thinking. But those consequences are there because all of creation was tied in to a human being in such a way where everything depends on him. He's entangled with everything and everything is entangled with him. And so here he speaks about what happens when a person sees something in this world. So this has to do with the Shekhinah, how we awaken life from within the Shekhinah, from within the infinite. It says when a person sees something in the world, he has suddenly from his mind, because of the vision that he had, something woke up inside of him. So he has this thought, a thought of love, a thought of fear that comes from his brain. So as the person is giving attention to something in this world, he's bringing life to that a deep brain. Part of the brain that interacts with the higher dimensions, with the dimensions that are so subtle that most of us are unaware that they're in there. But nevertheless, they're in there. So from within there, suddenly comes life. And this life comes through all the worlds, meaning through all the dimensions. Now it's coming down. It comes to the angel that's mamun on that specific thing. So for example, let's say he sees an animal. So he sees a goat. So now he woke up, right, symbolically within himself, the energy of a goat. He might see the image of the goat. He might already be remembering the smell of a goat. He might remember sounds. And all this not necessarily because this is what's taking place, but because the image of the goat is already waking up this angel. Now this angel of the goat didn't just wake up within that person's brain. It woke up in all of the universe. The creator of the universe just became more aware of goat because another facet of his being is now reflecting goat within its consciousness. And so now there's more goat within consciousness. There's more, that angel is getting more manifestation, is getting more emphasized in the reality of life. And this goes back to the concept of how the Goyim would serve Avodah Zarah, how the Goyim would try to make different forces, different energies more powerful in order to manipulate nature, in order to get something out of the world that they could only get through manipulation. And so this attention that a human being gives to something, it wakes up the force that is in charge of that specific thing. And everything has a specific malach. What does it mean, a malach of a goat, for example? Who's the malach of the goat? So if we're going to think about goats, every goat has its own shape, its own size, its own color. But there is a archetypical goat. There is an underlying form of what a goat is that is beyond the individual details of each goat. And each goat gets from that underlying structure a different manifestation. And this is similar to humanity. Every person, he gets from the same structure, from the same forces, from the same combination, a different manifestation, a different reality, a reality that has emphasis in different areas. Each one of us emphasizes different parts of the human being, but we all have the structure that is common to us all. And so that structure, if we think about human beings, that would be the ultimate human being. That would be what we call the Shem HaMforish, the Shem Havaya, the human being that hasn't yet lived, but he has the potential to live when we will realize him. But for the goat, there is a conceptual force, a force in the Olam HaMachshava that's real. What does it mean that it's real? It means it doesn't just reside within my thought, within my imagination, that I came up with this goat. This goat lives in the imagination of the collective. How do we know it lives in the imagination of the collective? Because if it didn't, it wouldn't have created goats. So by the fact that it created a goat, by the fact that a goat exists, it means that within the collective imagination, there is this concept called goat, and from there came goats. And so now when I look at the goat, I wake up that concept. I'm not only looking at the individual goat, I'm realizing that there's a concept called goat. So now I'm giving force, I'm giving power to that concept. I'm bringing it out from just being unmanifested, right? Just conceptual. And now it resides within my being. Now I give it power through my energy. And that comes, it gives him pleasure, it gives him satiation, it helps him grow, and it helps him give birth. Meaning that by me doing this, by me giving attention to that power, to that force, I'm allowing that force to become important to the Creator. Because the Creator created life for humanity. And so every interaction that humanity has with the force, every interaction that humanity has with anything in nature, defines that thing in nature, defines that malach, defines that koyach, and that affects the relationship that life has with that force. Because the collective imagination is run by the human imagination. So when the human imagination comes under the influence of a force, it means the collective imagination is under the influence of that force. And this is how people became big, concepts became big. This is why celebrities become important. This is why culture shapes, the lives of so many, of countless people. It's because as the imagination of humanity starts exposing itself more and more to a certain force, that force in the deeper realms, in the conceptual realms that we call Shamayim, get more power, get more substantiation, become more real. And then as others tune into reality, they start seeing that as real, because it's already been confirmed by so many imaginations that it becomes easier and easier to believe it and to see life from that perspective. And this is how all the ideas are running our lives. The ideas that were created by different people over different times, in the past and in history, are still running our lives till this very day. And these ideas only have power as long as they live within the imagination of humanity. If they get forgotten from the imagination of humanity, they lose existence. And so these are the malachim that are running our lives, the concepts and the ideas that we believe in. And when we follow them, when we do things based on those beliefs, it's a form of worship. We're making them stronger, we're making them more real. And so this happens for every specific reality that we focus on. When it's a real reality, when like a goat, then we're giving force to a real malach, to a koyach that actually exists within nature. And this was the concept of idol worship, where they would take real forces within nature and they would worship it, they would make them stronger, and they would try to get fertility, they would try to get produce, they would try to get different things from the forces in nature. Later on, people became even more ignorant and they started worshipping ideas that don't even exist within nature. So these concepts are Sheindalits, they're ghosts. These ideas have no existence within reality. They only exist within the imagination of man. And when man worships those ideas, then he doesn't only not get produce or fertility or anything else, he just starts destroying his own nervous system, he starts destroying his own equipment, because his mind was never designed to worship ideas that are not found within nature. His mind was designed to work strictly with nature, because the symbology of nature is what interacts with the imagination, so that the imagination can understand itself. And so as people went from the Greeks and started worshipping ideas that were combinations of words that had no underlying meaning, that didn't really relate to any reality, they started removing themselves from reality more and more, until they could behave like they do today, where you have structures upon structures of things that people are busy with years on end that have nothing to do with reality, nothing to do with the human body, the human spirit, the human condition, the creator, the creation, nothing. It's just loads upon loads of information that was manufactured by the brain, that has no correlation in any reality whatsoever outside of the human imagination. And so we can give power to those as well, but that's not healthy for us. What we're talking about here is that we give power to real forces. So for example, if a person realizes a flower, he sees the beauty of a flower and he's overtaken and he finds joy in it. So we would say that malach is then singing shir for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because through that person's mind, HaKadosh Baruch Hu realized his creation, he realized the beauty within creation, and therefore that malach that's mamun on that flower, that type of flower that specifically got that response from humanity, just did its purpose, because that was the goal originally, that it should be able to influence humanity in a positive way, it should be able to enhance humanity's experience. So as soon as it does that, it's actually fulfilling its destiny, it's fulfilling its purpose, and therefore it gives more power to that shayrish. And so in times like this, when people understood how to connect and how to give power to the different parts of nature, the fruits that they had, the flowers that they had, the general experience that they had was of a whole different caliber, was at a whole different level. And so he says, everything works like this. So the person, by contemplating something, he gives power to that thing. And then, as he contemplates and he becomes inspired, so now he's taking that life force. So the life force came, and he's now receiving chayis. He's receiving it. That it goes back and forth. On the one hand, the malach is getting life because the human being is interacting with the flower. On the other hand, the human being is getting life because the flower is interacting with the human being. So there's an exchange of life force. And this has a win-win interaction where both are benefiting. And this is always how nature creates interactions, where things come yofa be'ito, everything comes in perfect timing, so that there's more enhancement, there's more life, there's more purpose. Where even the things that seem to be taking are also giving. That's the underlying form of how nature created life. That we're always taking, and at the same time we're giving, if we're living within natural form. If we start worshipping ideas, then we can end up just wanting to take and not wanting to give at all. Or we can end up wanting to give and not knowing how to take it all. And both of these are dangerous, because our own existence is our first duty. We have to take care of that in order to be able to serve. And so always there needs to be an exchange And this is how nature works. And so when HaKadosh Baruch Hu creates us, it's not that He wants us to just give to Him. He creates us because He wants to give to us. But He can only give to us if we are willing to give what's required to give in order so that He can give to us. And so at a time like this, like we started off with, at a time when a sacrifice to get close, to have a carbon, means to actually give something away, to actually take something that you would rather have and give it up. This is the time where we have to be willing to do that in order to get close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But that's not always going to be the case. So there's going to come a time where HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not going to want from us anything. He's just going to want to give. And as far as He's concerned, that time is already now. As far as we're concerned, we don't have the vessel to receive what He wants to give until we learn how to sacrifice the parts of us that are contaminated, the parts of us that are based on ideas that are not real. And so we have to learn to separate what's real from what's not real. It's not wise to simply give everything up. It's not wise for a person not to care about his own destiny. He's supposed to. He's supposed to care about his destiny. He's supposed to take care of it. But at the same time, it has to be done with wisdom, meaning he has to realize what is his ultimate good. What is he really trying to get out of this experience? And to make sure that all the different drives that he has that can become distractions to that ultimate good can somehow be controlled, that he can somehow find a system of being able to maneuver so that he can get to where he needs to go. And that's a form of sacrifice. Today we don't have to look for what to sacrifice, just to be able to function within society, to be able to interact with people in a proper manner, to be able to overcome our disappointments. That's enough of a sacrifice if we can do it. Because ultimately what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants is the heart. And when times are good, we can show Him our heart by enjoying with Him, by simply coming close and having joy, having pleasure, enjoying other people, enjoying the things that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created. That could be enough for us to come close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But in times like this, in times of distance, in times when humanity's forgotten its purpose, we're going to interact with people who are not going to be ready to come to our level, to come to a place where peace is more important than everything else. And so we're going to have to learn how to sacrifice. We're going to have to learn how to become the type of people that can receive good even in such an environment. And that takes a very deep commitment. So we don't have to look for anything else to sacrifice. We don't have to look for anything else that we can do, that we should add to our burden. But we want to take what we already have and we want to do it better. We want to make our interactions a little more clean. We want to make our thought patterns a little less judgmental towards ourselves, towards others, more accepting, more forgiving, more kind. All these are sacrifices because ultimately the purpose of the sacrifice is that through the symbology of the carbon, through what takes place within the human imagination as they interact with the carbon. And today, the human imagination is not in the proper mindset to understand the sacrifice. So today, if a human being saw a sacrifice, it probably would not awaken in him any closeness to the one who created him, because our imagination has been already removed from its original state. It's already been tampered with. But in the times when people had a relationship with their truth, when they understood the elements within them, they could realize a reduction in judgment through the carbon. And this was necessary. According to the Zohar, the main physical carbonos was for the lower parts of humanity, those who themselves are not that different from the animals. Because the deeper a person went, the higher a person was. And to this degree, we might say that this is a little similar to what we mentioned from the Rambam, that carbonos came in order to copy what other people are doing. But we're not saying it's a copying of what other people are doing. We're saying that this is a message that is physicalized in a way that's necessary for people who are very physical. But the people who had deeper insight, they would gain that closeness through Torah. Or like today we know by davening, and Shalom Farms will say that the davening was created instead of the karbanos. And this is because Chazal realized that the mindsets are changing and the understandings are different, and today the carbon is not going to have the effect that we're trying to have on the person. The understanding is not there, the humility is not there. And so it wouldn't be directed appropriately. Another thing we see about the carbon is it says, Odom ki yakrev mikem carbon lashem. So the Chavadal say this, I think it's also in the Zohar, but also in the Gemara, that you're only allowed to bring a carbon to the Shem Havaya. You cannot bring a carbon to the Shem Elokim. Zavech lelehim yechrom bilti lashem levade. You can't serve any other divinity, any other force, other than the Shem Havaya. Only to him can you bring karbanis, and that means that you only want to bring a carbon to the very root of who you are, to the very source of your truth. But if you're sacrificing for anything else, then you're already serving, worshipping things that are not true completely, that are not real. And so in that case, why are you sacrificing? If you can interact with forces and they can enhance your experience, go for it. But you shouldn't sacrifice only for the ultimate truth. If it's not the ultimate truth, there shouldn't be any need for sacrificing. So everything should be done in accordance with nature. We shouldn't try to break nature. But when the ultimate truth demands that we break nature, that's the only time we can break nature. And this happens to us. Why does it happen that we should have to break nature? It only happens to us because we're distant. So then sometimes we do have to break our nature to overcome things that in a perfect world we wouldn't have to overcome. They wouldn't be there in the first place. And so the concept of carbon, the goal of carbon, is the heart, the human heart. And everything needs to be done in order to awaken that heart. That's the ultimate goal. So for a person that requires a carbon, it would come with a carbon, and the coin would be there to awaken the unity. The Levim would be there with the music. The Yisrael would be there with the Mamodos. So it was, the environment was designed in order to create repentance, in order to create awakening. And that would allow a person to realize his true purpose. He would realize what he really wants out of life. And so the goal was the heart. And whenever a person can find his heart, whenever a person can wake up his heart, whenever a person can find authentic emotion towards the one who created him, then that would be considered a carbon. That's called something that brings a person close. That's Mekarev, the individual, the Shechina, that is the collective of all individuals, and the source from where we all come. So Kadosh Baruch Hu should help us that we should be zoichen to open up our hearts, to be makriv our hearts, our desire as a carbon for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and He should unite us all together. Amen.
Right.
Questions?
You mentioned that when you look at a flower, or you bring up a korban, a goat, then HaKadosh Baruch Hu recognizes that flower. He recognizes the goat. But what does that mean that He recognizes it? He always recognized it. He created it. So how can me looking at it suddenly cause a recognition? What does that mean?
There is a mechanism of how HaKadosh Baruch Hu decides what's going to happen in the world. And like we said, He doesn't change. And so, if He doesn't change, how can things change?
So
and the answer is
God can change?
God cannot change.
Right.
But things can change. Things do change. So, how can He do things that change if He doesn't change? And the answer is that there's a mechanism of how He designed life. And when we speak about Him, we speak about the one that designed how life should run. So when we say HaKadosh Baruch Hu did, it doesn't mean HaKadosh Baruch Hu now intervened and he created something. It means that when he designed life, he designed it in such a way, and therefore when it happens, it's him doing it, because who else would do it? Just like we make every bracha, we say, for example, Hamoitzi lechem min haaretz. Was HaKadosh Baruch Hu there and he pulled out that bread from the ground? There were people there who did that. There are people who planted, there are people. But what was the force that created the kemach, right? What was the force that created the chita? It was a force within nature that was created by the divine originally when life was designed, and that's what created. And so when we talk about HaKadosh Baruch Hu not changing, when we talk about HaKadosh Baruch Hu knowing everything, when we talk about HaKadosh Baruch Hu's omnipresence, then we're talking about an unmanifested portion, the potential that he put within each molecule of creation, that it can become all these different things. But when we talk about a person imagining and giving force, giving power, that's already on the manifested side. That's on the side that we control. And that's why we say that humanity has the control to be miyachet kitchabrich shchintei. HaKadosh Baruch Hu Kaviyachol doesn't have the control to do that. What does it mean it doesn't have the control to do that? The definition of it is that we do it. That's the definition of the Shekhinah coming back, is that we realize. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu might be able to make us realize, but then still again, we're the ones realizing. That's what makes us come back. He's the one that doesn't change. So his knowledge of who he is known to him, but it's not known to us. When it's known to us, then we have returned. When it's not known to us, then we've gone away. And so our return depends strictly on us. His knowledge is already known to him. Now we have to become aware of it, and then we'll return. So that awareness of that knowledge is what returns us. In the same way, the awareness of a goat is what creates in the collective consciousness more goat. And if there's more goat has a specific energy. Goat represents gevuris. In general, goats are brought for chatas, sirizim echad lechatas. So a goat has a very specific connotation. So we might not be aware, but the imagination and the symbols that operate within it are very much aware. And they create and cause effects that we don't understand. And we are causing those effects even though we don't understand the effects. And they have effects that are way beyond anything that we could know how to calculate. But they're still real, because this is how Hashem designed life to happen. And this is how it actually happens. Is that we think, we give power, then things become, and then we react to those things, and then again we recreate, and we create, and we create further, and we hang on to ideas, and we dispose of ideas, and we believe certain things, and then we realize that we were wrong, and we believe other things. All this is causing tremendous movement in the heavens, in the place, in the imagination where the collective decides what's going to take place. But we are the ones making the movements. The system is the system. It's an open system, and we can do whatever we want with it. And when we do, this creates reality. This becomes.
So right now everybody's focusing on one thing, where it's like crazy.
It's a very powerful energy, there's no doubt. Right now, it's not only what they're focusing on, it's also what they're not focusing on. How many malachim have been abandoned that people have been building over years and years, and suddenly they might realize that these malachim were not really malachim, they were just ghosts, they were just ideas. Take me away for a week, and suddenly I realize it's not even real in the first place. You know, because as long as you're feeding it, it's real. Even though it's a ghost, even though it doesn't exist, it's just a demonic thought, it's a demonic idea that enslaves humanity. But if you believe it and you build it and you serve it, it becomes real. But once you let it go, because it's not a force of nature, because it's not real, it's going to disappear. It has no life of its own. It has no meaning of its own. It didn't exist in any previous generation. Somebody just made it up and we're enslaved to it. And so this is also a time where people can suddenly realize many things about their inner world, of what's real and what's not real.
So whatever the collective consciousness believes is essentially true, or becomes true.
It's not essentially true because the collective can believe lies, and it does believe lies. But it's true enough that that's the face of reality for as long as we believe it, and reality will interact with it as if it's real. And so in the areas where it's wrong, it's going to cause havoc. And this is exactly what it means, that the Shekhinah and HaKadosh Baruch Hu are not united. There's a separation between the real reality, the underlying essence of what's taking place, and the understanding of the imagination of what's taking place. And so to the extent that there's a gap between the two, there's suffering.
The first people that brought Kabbanis, Cain and Hevel, how did they know to bring Kabbanis? Who told them to bring it?
Right, so that's the point, that there's something natural within our imagination that understand these things. And all the original religious practices came from within. Avraham Avinu kept the whole Torah without learning Torah because he knew it from wisdom. So by understanding man, how man works, we will understand all the different things that man did, because everything that he did was to accommodate a specific problem. Everything was developed by necessity. And it's the ignorance of man today that they look back at their ancestors and think they were just believing, silliness. The people then didn't have the distractions that we have. So they interacted with reality in a much deeper way, in a much, much truer way. And so therefore their knowledge is way superior to ours, and what it means to be us and how we can relieve or alleviate the symptoms of being us. And they managed to live and find happiness in environments and circumstances and temperatures that we can't even dream of. We tell people to stay home for a few days and they freak out. But back then, people didn't necessarily even have a home to stay in, and there were storms, and there was wars, and there were fights, and there were others trying to dominate from above and from below and from the side. The safety that we have today wasn't even something anybody could imagine. And so they had a much more real interaction with life, and therefore they understood life, they understood the human being. We might understand, different things about technology and electricity and other enhancements, but we certainly don't understand the basics. We don't understand the world of concept that we reside within, and we don't understand how to improve the experience that we're having within our body, which is ultimately what really defines the quality of our lives.
So the more we interact with nature, the more we tap into wisdom of the world, essentially.
Well, wisdom is hard to come by today directly from nature, but yes, it's in nature, it's hidden within nature. But the easier way to get to it today is through the texts, the ancient texts that are specifically designed to preserve wisdom. So
you can interpret it so many ways.
That's exactly the point. It's only today's mind that thinks that something should be interpreted only in one way, and that's a good thing.
Isn't there one?
If somebody's trying to gain wisdom, every single way that he might think something is going to enhance his experience, is going to develop brain capacity, is going to give him access to information that he would have not had. And this goes back to the permutation of letters, Tziruf Oisius, that was the original way of the Nevi'im. The prophets would look at the Torah, they would see it in infinite different ways. First, there's the 70 different ways to interpret it, even when you leave the text the way that it is. So that's already 70. And then the prophet would start permutating letters, use Rosh Tevos, Sefer Tevos, Gematrias, all that, so that from this Torah, from this most authoritative book, he can find ideas and concepts that are unique to him, that nobody's ever seen there. And that would give tremendous development to the deeper intelligence, because ultimately what we're looking to find is ourselves. And so the more developed our language to be able to express ourselves, to express our deepest intelligence to our conscious mind, the more we'll be able to ultimately get to a place where we can be who we are. So it's about developing intelligence. It's not about understanding a specific instruction. This only came later when people became so ignorant. They thought, oh, so what do I need to do? What do I need to do? It's not about what you need to do. You should know enough about life that nobody should need to tell you what you need to do. If somebody still needs to tell you what you need to do, it's because something went wrong. or you're still 5 years old. And so the ultimate development is when we can understand what they were trying to transmit to us. What's the key? What's the ultimate understanding that's beneath the entire system? And even though most of us won't reach that ultimate goal, every step that we make towards that goal is an enhancement that makes the Creator proud, is an enhancement that's ultimately going to bring us closer to redemption. Because it's the intelligence that we're waiting for. If man was intelligent enough, emotionally and intellectually, then he wouldn't have to be in exile. So the only reason he's in exile is because he's not intelligent enough. But not only is he not intelligent enough, he's not even gaining intelligence in the right area. He's developing intelligence in a whole different area that's useless, that can just get other people to pay him, but they're not going to get him closer to his essence. They're not going to heal him in any way.
Why did the Creator only accept one offering and not the other one?
Because the heart has a nature, and it will only open when there's a legitimate desire to connect to something real. And so as soon as the intention is not perfected, then it's not possible for nature to interact with that person in an authentic way. Understand? So we come back to the same thing. It always has to do with the perpetrator. It always has to do with the creature that's making an attempt. And if he misunderstands, his attempt will fail. So instead of going for another attempt, he became aggravated, and that already shows us where his mind was, that something was wrong with this guy. You know, he wasn't all there. He wasn't okay. And there's reason for that.
But if God knew, because obviously He knows everything, that would cause him to kill his brother, then shouldn't he have just accepted it, and then that would have saved a life? It would have.
You think God is a person. You want him to change according to situations. God is the one that created nature. It's our job to figure out what that means and how to interact with it. Cain didn't, and therefore it didn't work. God is not standing there maneuvering within different scenarios in order to make whatever happen. He already made his master plan, and it's going to happen. It's up to us to figure out how do we get to the development that we need so that we can stop suffering. As long as we don't, we're going to keep hitting our head in the wall. Why ask about Cain and Hevel when you could ask about a million other people that are alive today, that are doing crazy things and suffering and going through, agony and craziness? Why doesn't he intervene? He created life. He wants you to intervene. That's what you're here for. Make it better. Figure it out. And as long as we think it's stupid, as long as we think it's a mikre, that it's just happenstance, that's when the Teichacha kicks in. The Teichacha says, I've already designed the system in such a way that if you think it's just happening to you and there's no meaning to it and there's no way, you're going to get beat up.
By the system.
By nature itself, because you're going to be walking into brick walls, because you're not going to have vision.
So there's no such thing as punishment, just consequences.
There's only consequences. Consequences are called punishments.